Workshop number 6 on page 14 of the manual, section 1-7. In this section we're going to talk about communications, tour procedures, and guidelines. And there's actually a lot of material in this section, so get ready. Section 1-7. Communications, tour procedures, and guidelines, and we're on page 14 of the manual. Communications and morning pickups. There are several calls that you'll get from the reservations office at Fisherman's Wharf. Typically the first of which is a confirmation call. Typically the Fisherman's Wharf office will confirm tours for the next day around 4 to 5 p.m. The exception to that is the Wine Lovers Tour. That one is unique in that the confirmation call usually goes out at 2 p.m. and that's to give the guide on that tour an opportunity, in case there are requests for specific wineries, gives the guide an opportunity to call ahead that day before and make reservations at wineries. Otherwise, you should get your reservation or your confirmation call for your next day's assignment between 4 and 5 p.m. the day before. Please do your very best to answer that call if it's safe to do so, and confirm your tour. If it's not safe to do so, let's say you're driving or something of that nature, as soon as you can, just give them a call back and let them know that you have in fact confirmed your tour for the next day, you're aware of it, etc. Pretty important for the reservations office to be able to check you off that you've confirmed your tour. If you don't call back, if they haven't heard from you, they are forced to assume that you are unaware of the fact that you're on schedule for the next day, in which case they're going to begin to look for an alternate guide to run that tour. So make sure to either take that call or call them back. The next communication typically that you would get potentially would be another call around 8 p.m. or an email. You'll often get multiple versions of your pickup list as updates occur, and those updates can occur for a lot of different reasons. And each time a new version of your list is generated, they will send it out to you. So it could be as obvious as a new addition to the list. Maybe someone made a late reservation and that's been added to your list. That will be fairly obvious when you see the most recent version. Sometimes you will get a second or a third or even more versions, and you won't necessarily see what's different between that one and the previous one. What will happen is that in some cases existing passengers will call in to change information. Maybe they give us a different hotel that they're being picked up at, or they might even just add a phone number, something of that nature. So it may not be obvious. The system will still generate a new version of the list. And so make sure to check the most recent version of the list. What has happened in the past is that guides have not realized that there was a later version and proceeded on their pickups and missed pickups or gone to the wrong pickup location because they had an old list. So definitely be confident that you have the most recent version of your list that you're operating on. And so expedition leaders should check the version of the pickup list at 8 p.m. and respond to an email if one was sent out to confirm receipt of the most recent copy. Updated versions of the pickup list will be sent out after 8 p.m. if there are updates. No calls to the driver are ever going to be made after 9 p.m. unless it's an emergency or the tour has been canceled. So typically you shouldn't get any calls beyond 9 p.m. And usually the last version to go out would be about 8 p.m. the last version of the list. The next call you'll get is the morning of your tour. We call it the wake-up call, though despite the name, we don't want you to use it as a wake-up call. We hope that you have a alarm clock or phone that will wake you up with plenty of time to get yourself ready and get out to the warehouse in time to start your tour. The purpose of the wake-up call is just to ensure that you didn't oversleep and that you are in fact on your way in to conduct your tour. So for the Yosemite tours, that call is typically made right around 5 a.m. and they'll just check that you're awake, that you have the most recent version of your list, and that'll pretty much be it. So it's usually a pretty quick call. On occasion it'll be a text versus a call. So please make sure to respond to that. You might be in the shower or etc., otherwise indisposed, and might not be able to answer the call right away. If you can make sure to make that a priority to return that call, because again, similar to the night before, the person calling you is going to check you off that you've confirmed you're up and on your way. If you don't do that, they will go into a mode where they have to try to find a last-minute alternate to run your tour, because they're assuming that you're not awake, you're not available, you're not aware of your tour. So please make it a priority to also respond as quickly as possible to the morning call if you can't answer the call right away. That way they know that you're on your way. So that call goes out at 5 a.m. for the Yosemite tours. For most other tours, that call will go out at 7 a.m. If no one has called you, and this is actually true the night before as well, please call into the reservations office. A scenario that might occur is that you have checked your schedule and you know that you're supposed to be working the next day, or you're listed as available for a tour the next day, so it's not one of your scheduled days off, but you haven't received a call. It's after 5 p.m. You're not sure what's going on. You thought you were working. If you don't get a call, it usually means that your tour was canceled or no tour assigned to you, but please do also, just in case, call the reservations office if you haven't gotten a confirmation call by 5 p.m. and you do expect to be working the next day. Give them a call after 5 p.m. and verify that you're actually not scheduled for the next day. And at that point, you can make plans for that day if you haven't already done so. What else? And then in the morning as well, if you don't get your morning call by 5:15 on the Yosemite tour and 7:15 on other tours, make sure to call into the reservations office. And if at any time you're calling into the reservations office at Fisherman's Wharf and you can't get through, which happens sometimes when they're overloaded, please call the manager on duty. And the manager on duty, I think I've mentioned this before if I haven't, manager on duty is always going to be your first line of defense for almost all the issues that come up. Well, your first line of defense would be the Fisherman's Wharf office. Part of their job is to help you get through your day and that sort of thing. But as a backup, and when problems occur, if you can't get a hold of anyone at the Fisherman's Wharf office, you'll want to call the astronomical manager on duty phone number. And that phone number is, you'll want to plug this number into your telephone, 415-967-1844. 415-967-1844. That's the astronomical manager on duty's phone number. Whoever's assigned to the manager on duty role will transfer that number to their personal phone. So that's the same number all the time. I think that is it for this section. Thank you. All right, Expedition Leader, Reservation Staff Times and Expectations. This is really kind of a summary of what I went over in the last slide. So I'll give you a minute to look it over again, just kind of said everything I've already said. And it's also on page 15 of the manual. You'll see a much more detailed outline of what's expected at what time, etc. So go through that and then move on to the next slide. This slide is also a little bit of a summary of what we've been talking about, but a couple of additions. And just to go over it again, the wake-up calls are to confirm drivers are awake and have the most recent pickup list. 5 a.m. for the Yosemite tours, 7 a.m. for all other tours, and 11:30 a.m. for all afternoon tours. I didn't mention that previously. A couple additional communications that are expected. Your checkout call. So every day that you have a tour, once you have collected all of your passengers and you've done your passenger count, and I think I've already mentioned this once, but it's super important to do a passenger count every day. Now, of course, if you're in a van with 6 to 8 people, you pretty much know that you've got all your people. But in larger vehicles, and even in vans when you're full up, you want to be absolutely clear that you actually have all of your passengers. So count heads, make sure you got the right number, and then call in to the Fisherman's Wharf office. Let them know that you have completed your pickups, you have all of your passengers, give them the number so they can check that against the number that they have, and then they'll send you on your way and you're free to start your tour. Don't forget to do that. I've forgotten to do that personally, other drivers have, and again, that's when you'll get that call. As soon as you've crossed the bridge and headed out either to Yosemite or up to Wine Country or Muir Woods, whatever, just crossed the bridge, just getting started on your tour, and you get that call from the Fisherman's Wharf. Hey, did you go to the Sheraton and pick up Mr. and Mrs. Smith? And last thing you want to do is have to turn around and go pick some people up. That's not a good way to start the day. One last call that we ask you to make is to check in at the end of your tour, any tour. Call the Fisherman's Wharf office and just confirm that you've completed your drop-offs and you're back at the warehouse. If it's after 10, they'll be closed. You don't need to call them. But if you're finishing up your Yosemite tour and it's a bit late, it's getting close to 10 and you know you're going to be back after 10, if they haven't called you, if it's safe, give them a quick call, let them know you're finishing up with your or give them your status, so that they know that they can check you out, because they're checking you in the day before, they're checking you in the morning of the tour, they're checking you out to start your tour, and then they're going to check you back in at the end of your tour. Those are the 4 things that the Fisherman's Wharf wants to do for every tour guide on any given day. Thank you. All right, pickup times, page 16 of the manual. We do pickups based on zones. The zones incorporate various neighborhoods that we pick up in, and they're set to try to simplify the routing for our pickups. Since we're getting reservations sometimes far in advance, we have to have these zones in order to logistically make the pickup system work. We of course never know how many passengers or pickups we're going to get in each zone on a daily basis. The zone system is kind of the best way we can try to set up a fair and manageable pickup system or pickup times. There is some confusion, can create problems for people when we let passengers that are making reservations know what their pickup time is. If we can communicate directly with them, we let them know your pickup time is at 7:40. We ask them to be ready, standing in front of their hotel at 7:40 or whatever the designated pickup time is. And we try to communicate to them that the driver will not necessarily pick them up right at that time because they might have multiple hotels within that zone. And so we try to communicate that it's sort of a window of about 15 to 20 minutes. That message doesn't always get communicated, and so some passengers, if you're not there right on the minute, they get frustrated. Talked a little bit about that earlier. But so the way the zones work, they were set up initially with our first tour. The first tour the company ever offered was the Yosemite tour, and so the orientation of these zones originates with the Yosemite tour. And the way you will travel through the zones, the timing of how you will travel through these zones depends on your tour, of course. and is always focused on how you will start your tour, i.e. on a Yosemite tour, you will complete your pickups and then cross the Bay Bridge, leaving San Francisco to the east. Whereas on a wine country tour or Muir Woods tour, you will start your tour leaving from the north across the Golden Gate Bridge, and on a Monterey Carmel tour, you'd be going south. On a city tour, it's a little bit different because you're staying in the city. So the first zone, what we call Zone A, is the Western Addition and Civic Center and the western portion of South of Market. There's not a ton of hotels in this zone, but there's just enough, and it's a very big zone. And so a lot of the problem areas and the pickups that will cause you problems are the outlying pickups in this zone and one or two of the other zones, because you can have a hotel like the Kabuki or something like that that's pretty far out in the Western Addition, and that one hotel is usually gonna be at the beginning of your pickup list. But if that will take you pretty far out. Some of the other zones that are problematic are the Financial District, which is pretty far out, and the traffic can be pretty bad if you're traveling during rush hour, and then the western end of South of Market. So the outlying hotels are often what make a pickup list difficult to achieve on any given day. But anyway, getting back to how the zones are set up, Western Addition and Zone A, Western Addition, eastern portion of South of Market, and part of the Civic Center. On a Yosemite tour, that zone is scheduled, pickup time is 5:50 in the morning, 5:50 a.m. And for other tours, for Woods and Wine tours, city tours, Muir Woods tours, 7:40 a.m. The Soma area, which basically incorporates western south portion of South of Market, the eastern portion of South of Market. On a Woods and Wine or Wine Country tour, that's going to be included in the 7:40 a.m. pickup zone. Whereas on the Yosemite tour, that would be the last zone you'd go to. So the Western Addition Civic Center, Zone A, is always the first zone you're going to go to, regardless of, well, for most tours, it's going to be the first zone you go to. The exception would be the Monterey Carmel tour and the city tour. On the Yosemite tour, since you'll go through South of Market just before getting on the Bay Bridge, that's the last zone you pick up, and that's 6:45 a.m. Downtown Union Square is zone... Actually, let me step back a second. Zone F is the western portion of Soma, and that's what we were just talking about. We call it Zone F. Zone E is downtown Union Square. That's the zone that has the largest concentration of hotels. And that zone, the pickup time for a Yosemite tours begins at 6:20 a.m. and for most other tours 7:45 a.m. Nob Hill, North Beach, and Chinatown are all part of Zone D. The pickup time for Zone D typically on a Yosemite tour is going to be 6:10 a.m. On a Wine Country or most other tours, it's going to be 8 a.m. The North Beach and Chinatown section of Zone D on a non-Yosemite tour, so a Wine Country, a Muir Woods tour, pushes out to 8:10 a.m. Fisherman's Wharf is the other big concentration of hotels in addition to Union Square. We call that Zone C. And on a Yosemite tour, that pickup time begins at 6 a.m. On a Wine Country tour or other tour, most other tours, that typically begins at 8:25 a.m. Again, the main exception would be the Monterey and Carmel tour. Zone B is Lombard Street in the Marina District. For a Yosemite tour, that zone pickups begin at 5:55 a.m. And for most other tours, including wine country tours and Muir Woods tours, that's an 8:30 a.m. pickup. Sausalito is a pickup we only offer for Muir Woods and wine country tours, and in fact that may be coming to an end. So as of the time that this is being recorded, we're still doing it, but we may not be doing it in the future. But that's only available for those tours, and it's usually at 9 a.m. The two East Bay zones are available only for Yosemite tours, no other tours. We pick the people up at West Oakland BART. Their designated pickup time is 7 a.m. And we also pick up people for Yosemite tours at the Dublin Pleasanton BART station at 7. Designated pickup time for that one is 7:20 a.m. And those two East Bay pickups again are only available for the Yosemite tour. For people that are staying in the Outer Bay area, the East Bay, etc., if they want to do our other tours, we ask them to take the BART train into the city, get off at Powell Street Station typically, and have them go to the Park 55 Hotel. One of the reasons the Park 55 Hotel can often be a very busy pickup for you. So the order which you'd take, you'd go to the zones on a Yosemite tour would be Zone A first, 5:50 a.m., Zone B second, 5:55 a.m., Zone C third, 6 a.m., Zone D fourth, 6:10 a.m., Zone E fifth, 6:20 a.m., and Zone F last, 6:45 a.m. And then once you cross the bridge, you'd go to the East Bay pickups if you have any there. Whereas on a wine country or Muir Woods tour, it would take a different order. You'd still typically start with Zone A. You'd also, for those tours, typically be picking up Zone F at 7:40 in the morning. Then you'd head over to Union Square for your second zone at 7:45 a.m. That's Zone E. Then you'd go to Nob Hill, the first part of Zone D at 8 a.m. Then you'd go to Chinatown and North Beach, if you have pickups there at 8:10 a.m. Then, assuming you have pickups at Fisherman's Wharf, that's where you'd go next, Zone C, 8:25 a.m. And finally, you'd finish off with Zone B, Lombard Street in the Marina District at 8:30 a.m. If you've have problems with your pickups, people have issues, whether it's a payment issue or they didn't show up, please make sure to call the Fisherman's Wharf office and check in with them. Don't make any decisions on your own if people don't show up, if people have issues. They are your best option in terms of handling issues that come up during your pickups. And one of their primary roles is to help you conduct your pickups smoothly. So remember, more communication is better than less. And I'll reiterate, I think I've already mentioned this, never leave town without confirming you have the right number of passengers and they are the right passengers. You must call the office and get manager approval if you don't have everyone on your pickup list. And never leave town without collecting or confirming all cash or vouchers for your tour. You must call the office if you have a dispute over cash owed or collected. And again, I typically don't actually collect the cash when I'm picking up. Many drivers do, so that'll be up to you. But I do absolutely confirm with passengers if they're listed as a collect cash reservation. I definitely want to make sure that they acknowledge that there is cash owed, so that if there is an issue, we can deal with it before you leave town. Thank you. Alright, we're on to page 17 in the manual, our leave behind policy, and this is one you're going to want to know well because it does come up fairly regularly that people are not where they're supposed to be, whether it's during your pickups or over the course of your tour. So get to know this well. And it's pretty well laid out in the manual, so I'm just kind of going to read through it. If the passenger is not at their pickup location at the time scheduled, the expedition leader should do everything possible to find them. Check with the doorman at the hotel, the front desk, or concierge. Announce loudly astronomical tours, Yosemite tour, whatever tour it is, in the lobby and at the loading zone. If there is a guest phone line, call and ask for the person's name from your pickup list. If there's a phone number listed for that passenger, you can call that number, see if they'll answer. Do your best to find them. And that goes back to being early for your first pickup. Particularly when you're in big buses. I think I talked about this already, but I'll talk about it again. With big buses in particular, when you've got a lot of pickups, getting to your first pickup early is essential because you can get sort of a jump on this sort of thing. And if that first passenger that you're picking up, they often will be the ones that are late because it's the earliest pickup. If you're there a bit early, that gives you time to, even before the scheduled pickup time, if you've got 5-10 minutes, you can run in, make sure they're on the register. They might even be ready early, and if they are, you can get them in the vehicle and get a jump start on your day. If they're not ready, you can at least make sure that they're there, and then right at the very time that you're supposed to pick them up, let's say it's a 5:50 a.m. pickup, right when the clock strikes 5:50, if they're not down getting off the elevator, you can immediately call their room, call the phone number, and make sure that they're coming. And that way you get the clock ticking, and then you can immediately, if they're not there right then, call the Fisherman's Wharf office and say, hey, it's 5:50 a.m., my passengers aren't here. They will go ahead and do their thing, try to find that passenger, and then you have now set the clock ticking to 5 minutes, which is how long typically they're going to ask you to wait. If you're unsuccessful, call the office as soon as you know you have a missing passenger for pickup. The reservations agent or manager on duty is going to attempt to check the file and make calls to try to locate the passenger. Sometimes they will have additional phone numbers that they can call that you don't see on your list. In addition, if a lot of times you'll have a foreign phone number that you can't call from your phone, but at the Fisherman's Wharf office they can use their Skype function to call overseas. So that's another thing they can do. If it is within the time window for the scheduled pickup, so the window means from the start of the pickup window to 20 minutes later, 15 to 20 minutes later. So if you're at the 5:50 time zone, your pickup window is 5:50 to basically, well, in that case, 6 o'clock. In Union Square, it'd be 6:20 to 6:40. So if it is within the time window for the scheduled pickup, the expedition leader should stand by at the hotel or move to the next pickup if it is in the same zone and come back to that hotel when possible. So if you've got other pickups nearby and within the same zone, you can move on to them. If there is a hotel staff member that you can tell, hey, I'm with Astronomical Tours, I'll be back to pick up these passengers, I'm just going to get another couple pickups in the area and then I'll return. That way they can communicate to the passengers if they show up. And then while you're off getting a couple more pickups in that zone, the reservations agent will attempt to call you back within 5 minutes with results from their attempted contact of the missing passenger. If it is 5 minutes or more past the scheduled pickup window and you have called the office, then you should notify the office that you're going on to your next pickup location if it is within the city, and that you will come back to attempt to pick up if we are able to find them. So remember, if it's 5 minutes past the end of the pickup window, not the beginning, then you can move on to your next zone. You should tell the reservations agent what your last pickup location is in case the guest is found. The expedition leader must call the office from their last pickup before leaving the city to check whether the guest has been found. Only if and when the manager on duty approves of your departure are you allowed to leave the city without your guests. So we want to make sure that every attempt has been made to find those missing people before we let you leave town. If a guest is missing during the tour, does not return to the vehicle on time, or a return guest that you are scheduled to pick up i.e. someone that did an overnight up in Yosemite or elsewhere, if they do not show up on time, you must wait a reasonable amount of time and have manager on duty approval before leaving without them. It's pretty severe to leave without a passenger, especially up in Yosemite, but really anywhere. You don't want to leave people behind. That's especially crucial in places like Yosemite and Muir Woods, where it's pretty hard to transport yourself back to San Francisco. We have maximum wait times that we have agreed to for each location, but those can be lengthened at the manager on duty's discretion. This comes up fairly often. People are going to be late, so managing tardiness, I think I've already talked about this, is going to be a big issue for any tour guide. Being assertive about timeliness, talking about it a lot, communicating about it a lot on every tour, making sure that people are clear that timeliness is being on time at all of your stops, is being respectful to the entire group, so that you want to make sure that they feel a sense of responsibility to the rest of the group to get back on time. That, I find, with a little bit of humor attached, is often the best way to keep people on time. But there's always going to be some people who are just chronically late, and that's just something we're forced to deal with. Particularly, certain cultures tend to be less time-oriented than others, and some cultures tend to be hyper time-focused. And when you've got passengers from each of those cultures in your bus, that can create big problems. So, while you're out on tour, the guidelines for leaving someone behind, up in Yosemite or on a Yosemite tour, 30 to 40 minutes is how long you're going to be asked to wait if a passenger doesn't come back. It seems like a long time, but we really don't want to leave them behind unless we really can't find them, because there are lots of repercussions if we do leave someone behind after the fact. The expedition leader can leave if no contact with the guest has occurred and the manager on duty has approved. So you never leave without manager on duty approval. In Muir Woods, that time is 15 to 20 minutes. Same rules apply. In Sonoma, also 15 to 20 minutes. Same rules apply. In Monterey, 15 minutes. Same rules apply. And in Carmel, 20 to 30 minutes. Same rules apply. In the city, it's kind of up to your judgment and discretion. When you're doing a city tour, it's fairly easy for people to find their way back, but you still want to make an effort and communicate about timeliness, etc. Do not stop in places that we have not predetermined unless it is an emergency. The exception is that certain tours like the city tour and the Monterey Carmel tour are marketed as tours where you can make extra stops. So do your best to stick to our predetermined stops, but on certain tours there are exceptions to that. Keep that in mind. So do not stop in places that we have not predetermined unless it's an emergency. Do not change the itinerary of a tour without discussing it with a manager. Your change may be a good change, but there may be issues you are unaware of that you would make that are a bad idea. And it can create problems that passengers expected to do certain stops, etc. Or if you do extra stops, it can sometimes get you back to town on time and, late, and passengers might have had made plans later that evening, and it can throw that into disarray. So be very careful. Try to stick to the planned itinerary of the tour. Be cautious if you're gonna try to do anything that is not on the itinerary, and always have a conversation with the manager before you do so. When using Highway 140 going into Yosemite, that's the route we take on the winter time in the off season, and you're fueling up in Turlock at the Safeway gas station, you can get a cheaper gas rate by entering your Safeway Club card number. If you don't have one, use Rodrigo's phone number.